Hello and welcome back to DeadTalks. This is a video that I came up with the idea for when I was doing my Things You Missed episodes on Split and Unbreakable, and I was watching both movies and noticing that they're very similar scenes at similar points in each movie. Like, for example, both movies began with a birthday party scene. Not a party in Elijah's case, but both movies open with a birthday scene, and then there's a scene of a child pointing a gun at an older family member at about the same point in both movies right before the climax. So I figured I'd watch the movies side by side and see what other clues were left by director M. Night Shyamalan to tell us that Split is a sequel and how it uses that same formula as Unbreakable. So there are a couple different ways I could do this. I could do it like this, where I just play both movies at regular speed, and Split is a little bit of a longer movie, so it'll go a little bit past Unbreakable. And the other way would be to stretch them both so that they're the same length like this. And that might help things line up a little bit better because both movies use like a 3-act structure formula. So similar events are going to be happening at the same points in each movie. But for this video, I'm going to be doing it to where they are just both playing at regular speed. So with that all being said, let's watch Split and Unbreakable. Dun, dun. So I don't actually think that things are going to line up perfectly. I don't think he planned to have things line up exactly if you put both movies on top of each other like this. I don't think he edited Split over Unbreakable. I think if he had done something like that, then Split probably would have suffered for it. But I do think that there are just certain similarities with the plot of each movie. So you see we got Elijah being born and Claire celebrating her birthday. Yeah, those two in the backseat are watching CZsWorld videos. I gotta say, this sounds pretty good with the Unbreakable music playing over this beginning scene in Split. Oh, this is gonna be so cool. Okay, I think when Bruce Willis comes on screen, he's gonna have his head against the window, just like very similar to about how Dennis is sitting against the window in Split. That's like, they're both leaning back on the headrest like that. That's really interesting. And again, there may be things that we find that are kind of coincidentally similar, but like this is pretty similar, I'd have to say. So these aren't lining up perfectly, but another thing that's similar about both of these movies is you have the main character waking up and realizing that they're okay after some kind of disaster. In the case of Split, it's her getting knocked out by Dennis and waking up in the holding room. And then in the case of Unbreakable, he wakes up in the doctor's office after the train accident. And if that might be one of those things that if we stretch the movies to be the same length, that they maybe even fall a little bit closer to each other. I do hope that there is something at some point where there's an exact frame in both movies that looks very similar so that I can use it for my thumbnail. And I can just have just like this shocked reaction. Man, watching them side by side like this makes it twice as tense, twice as scary. Oh, this is so interesting. Okay, seeing the news report of both tragedies on the screen. In Unbreakable, it's Joseph, and now right here, it's Dr. Fletcher. They don't take place at exactly the same time, but they take place at very similar points in each movie. And I think maybe if you count the scenes or sequences, then those events do kind of line up in terms of their overall position. Oh, man. That's very much a coincidence, but Barry and David being on the stairs at the same time. That's hilarious. Like trying to hear the audio from both movies at once reminds me of that time that I watched every West Dakota video at once.
If ever something were to happen to me, I've made arrangements with a colleague from Baltimore to take over.
That's weird. As soon as she says, if ever something were to happen to me, he opens the thing and says, how many days have you been sick? But again, that's not the type of thing that I'm looking for necessarily with this video. Two old ladies on the screen at the same time. Oh my God. That is almost too close though. David standing in the doorway talking to this woman, and Barry, aka Dennis, is standing in the doorway talking to Dr. Fletcher. They leave at the same time. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Well, this is already more interesting than I thought. This is the same shot. This is insane. They're both looking through the door in profile at the same time. That's crazy. I'm so glad I did this. This is so entertaining.
Patricia has reminded me
It's the same shot. Are you kidding me? How does that keep happening? Like both looking down at the same angle, both over the shoulders. Oh, this is kind of interesting. So in Split, we're seeing Hedwig's drawing of the beast, and in Unbreakable, we're seeing Elijah open up the comic book, and if you saw my things you missed, you know that yellow guy on the comic book page, Jaguaro, is very similar to the beast, and I think he represents what the beast is supposed to be in Split. And also pretty interesting here is we have that upside down shot of Elijah flipping around the comic, and then the sideways shot over there of Casey first viewing Hedwig when she wakes up. There's another thing that I talked about in the things you missed. So if you want to hear about like what all that means, the upside down shots, the sideways shots in both movies, go and check out those two things you missed episodes. A couple of scenes after this, Elijah talks about how comics are like our last link to hieroglyphics and drawings and runes and stuff. And I wonder if Hedwig is kind of like an emerging comic book artist in a way with his pictures, his drawings of the beast and stuff like that. There is a top-down scene like this, that's seen in Split right now, later in the movie when David is looking back at his old newspaper clippings in the closet. It's kind of a similar shot. Yeah, this is the scene I was talking about where we're above David. And to be honest, in both movies, when this shot is used, it's because of something secret hidden above. In Split's case, it's the secret passageway through the vent, and in David is hiding his gun up there and his old newspaper clippings. So this is kind of interesting. I was a little bit hesitant to bring it up, but Dr. Fletcher has a suspicion that this is not Barry, that he's hiding something. Right now, David has a suspicion that the guy in the camouflage jacket is carrying a gun, that he's hiding something. And then we've got Elijah saying, like, do you have good instincts for things like that? And Dr. Fletcher on the other side using her intuition to make the prediction that this is in fact Dennis, not Barry. So now Elijah is keeping an eye on this guy as he's leaving and trying to gather more information. And Dr. Fletcher on the other side is looking at the security footage of Dennis leaving and trying to gather more information. This is another thing I thought about, and I didn't mention in the Things You Missed episodes, but Shyamalan makes a cameo in both movies. So is he playing the same character in both movies? Did the stadium drug dealer guy grow up and become an IT guy in Split? No. There's my thumbnail. Both characters suffering, both characters lying down at this point in the movie. Both characters have basically given up hope right here. So this is the Shyamalan cameo scene in Unbreakable. And earlier I was talking about, like, is this the same character as the Shyamalan from Split? Looking at it, like, he does make an effort to make himself look different, but also he's 15 years older in Split, so obviously he's going to look different. But as far as, like, the hairstyle, he didn't really try to replicate the look from Unbreakable. So that I'm kind of thinking that it's not the same character. It's kind of also interesting how Dr. Fletcher's color is also green as David's is. And she has like all of these plants in the background. Shyamalan recently posted a tweet where he talks about like the reasoning for all of his color choices in Unbreakable. And he talked about green being like the color of nature and the color of healing, and that's why he chose green for the good guy. And it seems like every time in Unbreakable that David talks to an old lady happens to be during these Dr. Fletcher scenes. I mean, these two scenes are very similar. Oh man, this is going to be such a bad juxtaposition. The funniest part in Split going over the most serious part in Unbreakable. Oh man. This is kind of interesting. There's two characters facing each other, talking in profile. We have artwork in the back in both situations. And like these things may have lined up unintentionally, but he may have had the idea for this scene based on like, I'm going to compose this in a similar way to Unbreakable, and it happened to line up. Oh man, here's another potentially really cool reference or coincidence or whatever you want to call it. So she contacts this guy on the walkie-talkie and tells him to call the police, and this guy in the comic book store threatens to call the police on Elijah because he won't get out of the store. This is the only time that we see the inside of Joseph's room, I believe, and the only time in Split that we see the inside of Hedwig's room, and they both have toys in their room and stuff. Look at this. Like, he's guiding her down the aisle, and the comic book guy is guiding Elijah down the aisle, and they're both in trouble, right? They both notice something on the ground at the same time. This is unbelievable. Like, when I made this video, I thought like, okay, there'll be a couple things that are similar and they might not even line up perfectly, but there are probably some scenes that are similar in both movies. But there are so many crazy coincidences in this. These shots almost look similar, like the rocks on the right side and the trees on the left side. And they're both talking about a game. Like the uncle's talking about the game where they pretend that they're animals, and she's talking about the game where they ask each other questions. You know, I didn't even think about this, but earlier in Split, like, and these don't line up at all. It was way earlier. But Casey says, she tells Hedwig, like, oh, we're like your babysitters. Unbreakable has this babysitter scene. I don't know why I brought that up, but I just thought that I would. I always find it hilarious how they don't even offer the babysitter a ride. She's just supposed to walk home in the rain. So I think that Elijah revealing that Kevin has this weakness is also like structurally kind of in the same place as when Dr. Fletcher writes, say his name, Kevin Wendell Crumb, on the receipt to reveal the Horde's weakness. I think the scenes are going to get further and further apart because we're getting towards the end of the movie. And as I mentioned, Split is longer than Unbreakable. So at the beginning, they're going to be the similar scenes structurally are going to be kind of close, where at the end, they're going to be a little bit further apart. But I do think that is kind of like a similar scene in both movies. And it's kind of a trope in superhero movies in general, where there's that moment where the superhero's weakness is exposed and he has to find a way to overcome it. And then, of course, there's also this scene in Unbreakable where David is revisiting the train yard, and that's coming up pretty soon here in Split as well. So there may be something to be said about Dr. Fletcher discovering the horrible things that Dennis and Patricia have done to these girls, taking place around the same time as David going to the train station and bumping into people and discovering like all these horrible things that people around the city have done. And I think that'll kind of come to a head in Glass when David eventually does have his run-in with the Horde and sees the wrong that he's committed in his past. It'll be interesting to see if he bumps into one personality of the Horde, if he's going to see just that identity's actions, or if he's going to see stuff that the other identities have done as well. So here we go. It actually is going to line up where Kevin is at the train station at the same time as David Dunn. And on the whole train thing, obviously, it's not like there aren't other films that have trains in them, you know? Even other Shyamalan films, The Happening, they take a train to try to get out of the Northeast area. In The Visit, they take a train to go visit the grandparents. So I think that's kind of something that helped cover up the fact that Split was a sequel, because you could say like, oh, trains, it's got to be related to Unbreakable, but then you think, oh, no, there's been trains in plenty of films. And it's not really until you take like that deeper look at it that you realize how similar they actually are. So 2 girls locked up inside a closet, 2 girls locked up inside separate closets and split. Or I take that back. This is actually a bathroom that the girls in Unbreakable are locked up in, I believe. And it looks like David's fight with the Orange Man is basically going to coincide with Dr. Fletcher's struggle against the Beast. And like structurally, maybe it coincides with Casey's fight with the Beast at the end of Split. I'm going to miss Dr. Fletcher in Glass. She's one of my favorite characters. And how about this? Dr. Fletcher leaves that little note for the girls, and that's like she's reaching out to the hero and giving them help. And on Unbreakable, you've got David, who's probably going to drown in that swimming pool, if not with the help from the girls who throw him the pole that helped him get out, which you can see on the left right here. And yeah, I mean, it's something that happens a lot of the time in comic books and comic book movies where the hero's down and he seeks help from some outside force, some other good guy. No, this is crazy. This is crazy. Okay, so Casey is going to discover Claire's dead body, and just as David goes to try to help this girl, the mom, and discovering that she's dead as well, and they're taking place at the exact same point in both movies. Oh, what? No. They open the door in sync. Come on. That one's pretty funny. Look at these shots. They're like mirror images of each other. This was such a fun experiment. And I mean, realistically, again, like from a structural standpoint, him carrying the wife out and saying like, okay, the nightmare is over now, is basically like the equivalent of Split, where the guy finds Casey at the end after the confrontation with the beast and takes her out and gets her the help that she needs.
Did I hurt you?
Yeah, so at this point, I'm not sure that there's going to be anything else that lines up, because we're already past the climax in Unbreakable, and we're kind of just getting into it in Split. And like I said, Split is a longer movie. I think Elijah's whole speech about not knowing your place in the world kind of coincides with the ending scene of Split, which we're obviously not at yet. They want the world to know that they exist. All right, so Unbreakable is now over, and Split is just finishing up its climax, really. So there were a lot of really interesting things, some of them coincidence, and some of them were scenes that kind of took the same purpose in both films and took place at similar spots, but sometimes the exact same spot and sometimes similar ratio into the story, I guess. So that's going to do it for this video. I'm probably going to hang out and finish watching the end of Split. But until next time, when we're going to be doing a Things You Missed on Glass coming up later at the end of this week, I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing Glass. So if you're interested in that, remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week. Ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive. Okay, one more thing. The last line of each movie is Mr. Glass. I just wanted to add that.